Hello, welcome to the Plutonian Podcast. My name's Rue. I'm here to bring that beautiful, ugly truth to you, the self truth, the truth of my own self and my subjective experience of what truth is. Here on the 17th of September, 2021. It's been a while since I've done a podcast. I am live streaming on YouTube and Facebook, the government owned and operated platforms that most of us see and believe are independent. They are what appear to be self-made from startups. Maybe they were at one point ideas that people had individuals to make society better, but as we have seen the censorship growing and growing, people that are willing to speak out against what they view as tyranny or what's wrong. Basically, what I'm talking about is people that are willing to speak up about the ill effects of collectivization, people that are willing to speak out against the COVID cult crime, the cult of personalities, the rampant digitalization of society and such things. There's really a lot going on in society today, and I'm dealing with I'm going to skip this song. I'm just on Spotify over here, playing something that hopefully won't get me a copyright strike, but the topics today I have are pretty vast. The topic is very vast, actually, because it's selfhood and confusions, delusions, conclusions. These are all very big topics that I've chose today, and that's because it's my 9th episode, my 9th production. That sounds better. I could just hold the mic. It's kind of annoying though, but anyways, the reason why number 9 is so special to me as a number is because it's the last number before 10, and it's got quite a bit of metaphysical influence, and you look at it as a number by itself. Anything added into 9 is reducible to the number 9, and what I mean by that is numerology. And if you are curious about numerology, just take your birth date, month, day, and year, and add up all the digits until you get one digit. And then you have your life path. And this is something that goes back to, my opinion, the beginning of existence, because humans really are no different from any other animal, except that we have the technology known as language. And language is a very potent technology. And if you don't see that in your day-to-day life, well, just recognize that nonverbal communication is a lot. It comes from the subconscious, but the conscious information that we transmit is through language, whether it's spoken or written. And the unconscious is presented through, nonverbal cues, like you can tell from my presentation of myself in this video, how comfortable I am with myself and doing this information. you can tell a lot from the way people move and present themselves to the world, how you basically subconsciously sum up what the person's intent is. But I've been really struggling with what I want to present on this podcast, and that's because I want to create something of value that is spiritually relevant to today's day and age, and beneficial, that doesn't scare people, that doesn't make people more in fear for the future, that rhymes with every other podcast and every other piece of media that's out there right now. And I feel like what a lot of people do is they take these mainstream narratives and they want to talk about them being truthers, which I never even these terms, truthers and woke, and all these are very misleading terms. These are delusional terms because, well, first of all, truth is subjective for the individual, but there's collective truths, and then there's subjective truths. And a lot of what I see in these truth communities are truthers attacking each other, and it's very irreprehensible, to me anyways. You kind of discredit yourself when you go out of your way to try and make someone look or sound bad, and I'm guilty of that myself in my personal life, in my public life. It's not easy, and it's difficult to create something that's unique and individual. But I believe that we all have an obligation to create something in this life that's unique, because we are all unique expressions of life. And I'd like to get really deep and talk about the monistic not monistic but the word is mono because it's singular, right? But monism, which is basically the idea that everything comes from one thing, one source. And you could look at that as a theistic or deistic kind of, there's a creator, or there is a creative pattern to life, or there's a creative principle that organizes life. And that's simply observable in the causal universe, which you look at the sun rises every day, and you have the seasons one following the next, and you have birth, middle age, and then death. These are the orders of reality, the orders of organization. And that's why I believe that there is a creative intelligence in the universe. And there really wouldn't be any life without a beneficial cause or a means or an end. There has to be a purpose to life, and that's where a lot of people get really depressed because they fail to see it. And that's because a lot of people have their purpose given to them by their job or their family or an external thing. And what I observe is that a lot of this, I want to say, just meaningless shit, there's so much that's produced these days, especially in the Western culture and especially in America. We have so many devices, so many things to keep us occupied with the external, and that is a distraction from the self. And that's why a lot of people, some people are very miserable because they don't really have a lot of purpose in their life except by these external means. And that's where a lot of this confusion and delusion comes in. And what's up, Dustin from Facebook? Shout out to Dustin from Facebook, one of my original fans. He said beer. He's got a 30 rack. You got a 30 rack, Dustin? Man, there's so much going on in the world, and all these external things, I believe, are driving us towards the inner realms. They're driving us towards inner sovereignty. Just time. Yes. Near 30 o'clock. Oh, yeah. I reckon. It's fun because I got people that can come in on my live streams and comment, and sometimes people do, and it makes it more interesting. So all these external distractions are creating a natural drive for people to turn inward, because it would seem that everything, not everything, but there's no more really anything outside of us that can satisfy, at least that's how I feel in my personal life, that there's not really anything else that I need externally. I feel like I'm taking care of, especially right now, because I have food in my belly. I have a nice truck and a beautiful fiance and a nice little situation. I have a good setup over here. So now that's where this podcast is coming from, is from within my need to create. And I like to create ideas, because idealism is a very potent, actually the most potent thing that we have right now in the 21st century, because we have a lot of volatile ideas that are being spread and promulgated throughout society that I think are ultimately turning to drugs. Yes, ultimately making people, try to, I think a lot of us are trying to quiet the inner self and the inner desires, and it's really difficult, to quiet the self. And that's why, more and more are needed to more and more things are needed to assuage that desire to create. So people just keep accumulating more and more shit. People build up a tolerance to these drugs that they use, to their medicines, their pharmaceuticals, their drugs, their habits, their addictions. They get stronger and stronger. That's because you're building up a neurological pathway, and you're conditioning yourself. And that's, another thing that I always try to talk about, is the conditioning that we have. Man, I really hate this poster. I love this poster, but I put new tape on it and it still comes off. It's annoying. I got to give myself something to do while I'm online. But, one thing that I wanted to talk about today was the opportunity that these global situations are presenting to us. The global pandemic, the climate crisis, and overpopulation, and starvation. I feel like the world is becoming kind of a global village, because you can instantly see what's happening in another country, and it can spread across the world, that some crazy story so quickly that it's like creates this consciousness and this awareness of what's going on in a different part of the world, and how it can affect us on a global scale. But it's sad, because we're all so interconnected, and it's not a sad thing that we're interconnected, but it's sad that we're not more sovereign and individualistic and self-sustaining. Yeah, everyone is looking at America. That is true. Dustin, that is so true, because like, we're supposed to be the beacon of freedom, and American imperialism has built up this giant empire of technology and resources and powers, information, engineering, and the medical fields. And, especially a lot of in the Western world are looking to America like, hey, what's going on? America's supposed to be the defenders of freedom. And we have people over in France that are literally revolting by the hundreds of million or hundreds of thousands, literally like 100,000 people every day, or not every day, but like at least every week, and they have a giant revolt against their COVID pass, which is the digital pass. They call it a freedom pass, where once you get your vaccine, or you have proved yourself to the government that you're healthy, uh this is something that is affecting all of us. And I just kind of want to say that we have a air quote global situation here, that's creating an opportunity for a type of global consciousness. But what I see unfolding is that there's merchants of fear, these people creating this fear, these global situations that are trying to unite us under fear. We are the one of the few last countries that have weapons to defend our liberties. Still, yes, we have the right to bear arms, but it's kind of hard for us to bear arms because when we're behind enemy lines over here, they're the it's really hard to openly speak about this because the labels that could get thrown on me. But I'm not really worried. Nobody watches. I'm under the radar on behind enemy lines. But if you speak out against the idealism of collectivization and socialism, these social justice warriors, if you have any traction, will try to get you taken down. Dustin says, I think this is time for the revolutionary doctors to uphold their oath, and just give all their patients the documentation saying we got the jab. That's a tough situation to wrap your head around, because honestly, I don't feel like I even want paperwork documenting that I've acquiesced to the power structures demand that I get the new socially accepted accreditation to participate in society, which people come to know as the jab or the vaccine. It's and it sucks that we've been divided so easily and polarized so easy. And what's even more disturbing is that people believe in government, and they forgot that government's an idea here in America. It's just an idea. It was supposed to be a self-governing entity, but somehow that got lost, if it ever was a thing. But Americans don't even know their history that well, and I don't know my history even that well. It's just, you just look at the elites of the people that created, they were Freemasonic elites. George Washington was a Pisces, but he also had a whole entire basement full of skeletons. Jargon Batman. Yo, what's up, Tyson? My brother's on YouTube. That's cool. I got one watching on YouTube and one on Facebook. But what I'm getting at here is that we were created under the principle of freedom and liberty and justice for all. But we got to really kind of take a step back and realize that we're being ruled over by dead people. People want to call North Korea a necropsy, and if that's the right word, which is basically it's like democracy but ruled by dead people. We got to look at it as the same way over. That's the way I look at it over here in America, is the same thing. Like, we're being ruled over by this constitution that's X amount of years old, that was drafted up by people that are dead. It's not a fluid thing. It's not adapting to this new age that we're in. Necropsy. Necrotocracy. Thank you. He's my jargon associate over here. So Dustin says it would be interesting to see if everything goes back to normal since everyone supposedly got the shit. Yeah, and I don't think things are going to go back to normal. And I have an article here that I want to read, where there's the people that want to go back to the way that the things were, the way the life was, and that there's people that want to go and find a new normal, in a new way, and a new path. And nothing's ever going to be the same, and that's the principle of the Book of Changes and Taoism, and just the natural principle of life is that the only thing that stays the same is that nothing stays the same, and this encapsulates all the fundamental paradoxes of what it is to be alive and in this subjective reality. And it's unfortunate that people haven't recognized the doom of what we're in, is that this is that it's time to change, that we're in a dying culture, in a dying society, where it's like, the baby boomers are used to life being the same. They had their whole chunk of life, 30 years, that would relative economic growth from X period of coming out of the Great Depression all the way up to 2008. They had steady financial growth and a steady homogenous system where you could depend on your neighbors and going to church, and like this idea of white privilege. But you got to realize that that's just a way to divide us too. It's like, divide us from one generation to the next, and divide us from one race to the next. And it's like, you got to realize that races aren't supposed to mix in communities. Like, you have your Black community and your white community and your Asian community, and that was like your typical American makeup, which makes us cool because we're so diverse. And you got the indigenous people, but it was like, you can't really mix those communities up too well, because we all have different values. And it's not to say that these values are right and those values are wrong. It's just that Black people are different from white people, and white people are different from Asian people. It's like, shaking hands is kind of a Western American thing, but not in India, not in Asia. Like, in Asian cultures, they bow and shit. Dustin's over here talking to me. He says, nothing under the sun is new, I think is what he's saying, just accomplished in a different manner. Yes, we have cycles like that. The truths you grew up with knowing are just a pack of lies and propaganda. Just that's a perfect example. And this is something that I hear, American exceptionalism, like we're the best country in the world and we're the most virtuous and we protect the whole world from terrorists. And that shit was born in 2001 when I was a kid. This, they had to rebirth that because they fucked up the whole Vietnam situation, where it was like, so many people were against that war, and it was like, why were we even in that in the first place? And I can't even really say much about it because I'm not in that era of, except that I hear that it was a big conspiracy to get us into the war anyways, with the Gulf of Tonkin incident. And you could even go back even further to World War II, and that the damn commanders of the ship, the captains, saw a giant fleet coming into Pearl Harbor to hit us, but they just ignored that. Switch over to 9/11, and we were running drills to counteract a terrorist hijacking our commercial planes. They were literally running a simulation with those fighter jet, like the military was running a simulation with fighter jets for this supposed event of terrorists attacking us. And this is all information that you can get now. And this is was another one of my topics, is information overload. There used to be an issue with getting the information, and it was hard to get information. You really had to go to the library, and you really had to put in time and effort and go through catalogs and talk to people and make connections to get that information. But now we're inundated with information. We are saturated with so much information. We take in, I heard last, it was like we take in like 34 gigabytes of new information every day. That's information overload. People want to believe that multitasking is good and that you're efficient and you're healthy, but contrary to popular belief, multitasking is actually detrimental to your mental focus and your empathy. Even it makes you less empathetic. This is just an article that I read on Medium, where Medium's an app where they take a whole entire book and they synthesize it into like a 5 or 10 minute read or a talk, which again reiterates and reinforces the whole notion of information overload. You can consume a book in 5 minutes, the synthesis or the summary of a book. So it's like people have so much information, but they don't have the discernment and discretion. They don't have the inner light within them to be like, okay, well, this is relevant information and this is valuable information and this is disinformation. This is a distraction. What did Dustin say over here? Dustin is like my co-host right now, and I got my moral support from my brother over here, but they have had a simulation scheduled the same day, so active duty soldiers in the Air Forces would stand down because they had been told it was it. So yeah, so what Dustin is, he's reinforcing my point is that we were running that simulation to get people to stand down in the military to try and, it's all a big fucking psyop though. It's just like, wow, really? You're gonna mind fuck me? Like 9/11, come on, you're gonna tell me the most advanced military in the world can just like 5 dudes with box cutters can hijack 3 planes and blow up three buildings with 2 planes and then crash one in the middle of the fucking forest and then blow up the Pentagon with no parts of the plane, no debris, it just doesn't add up. Like logically, these things don't add up. And also, it's just none of this. It's just all this is mind blowing. So, what it is important to cultivate is a sense of inner autonomy and take all this shit from the outside and shut it off and go within and focus on yourself. Because that's the only thing that really matters. The only person you really have is yourself, your soul. All these things are driving us back into the self and into creating and into being an individual. So I say the antidote to, let's just say, toxic capitalism, because people don't like hearing anything negative about capitalism. Demolition experts. Damn, Dustin just going off about 9/11. It's very difficult for us to focus because there's so many distractions out here. It's a sensory overload. Those buildings did come down perfectly, Dustin. I know. If anyone that has the balls to go investigate 9/11, the writing's on the wall. 20 or 30 years of predictive programming. It was in all of our movies. It was in comic books. It was in cartoon shows. The building's coming down. The building's coming down. What's up, Steven? Salute. Finally got on to do a whole podcast over here, and it's kind of like my mind going all over the place over here. But for anyone that's interested in ideas and hearing what I have to say, that's why idealism. Okay, that's what I was talking about. Capitalism is the ideal that drives us in Western society, specifically in America. But I have an issue with, let's just say, toxic capitalism because it promotes efficiency, but it also promotes, in my opinion, doing something as quickly as possible and as cheaply as possible just to get the money and move on to the next venture. So in a way, I would view capitalism as it's very hard to define capitalism, but the way I see it is it's just it drives us towards being efficient but not creating value. I feel like its sole purpose is efficiency and making money, and if it's consumerism, and that's what it's turned into or devolved into. Hanging in here. This is my buddy Steven on Facebook. Been out in the hospital, lost about 30 pounds, having trouble swallowing, almost like I forgot how. Damn, Dustin. It's fuck. It's a tough pill to swallow, bro. I'm sorry to hear that, man. I'm glad you're all right. I hope you're all right, man. God bless you. Sending out a prayer for you and your family, man. This is a good man over here. He's been supporting me in what I do and driving me to stay consistent with my podcast. And it's hard for me to get out these podcasts again because I want to create something of value where I'm not just rambling, which appears that's what I'm doing right now. And, but create something that, gives something people to think about. And so this is, another thing that my brother is saying over here, creates unhealthy competition, and they cut Americans' throats by hiring illegals. That's what's wrong with current and toxic. That's one thing that's wrong with toxic capitalism, but they hire illegals, but why are they hiring illegals? And how did it get to that point is my question. Well, I would say that most of the legal workers moved out of those workforces and into the more lucrative aspects of the American economy, which is engineering and coding and pharmaceuticals, science, that kind of stuff. Like the smart white people, not the good hard work and blue collar, but it's like all the blue collar, a lot of the blue collar people started taking off their blue collars and going into white collar. So it created this gap in the economy that needed to be filled, which was like people doing menial tasks like picking food and doing construction. Because my foreman is a Mexican. Like, he speaks English, but I have to really like think and process it. And the dude that I'm usually helping doesn't really even speak English. He understands it, but and I don't have any angst against them. Are they illegal? I don't know. Do I care? Not really. I mean, kind of, but it's like, I'm grateful that they're there, and more people like, God, this is such a vast topic. This is such a hard thing for me to unpack because, who would be building those houses for all of your typical Americans that are white collar class, because a lot of these people are, people that are making, let's say, over $50,000 in salary, and they buy a home, but they mortgage it, which means death grip. So they go into this financial contract where they have to pay 30 years on this fucking house that they don't own. So they're basically owned by the bank, but the people, it's all connected. What I'm trying to say is that they got to have this cheap labor, which is what the fuck capitalism is about, is doing something efficiently as you can. If you can squeeze someone for 12 hours a day and pay them minimum wage and not worry about their body or their well-being, and if it's someone that doesn't speak English, cool, I get it, like, let's do it, let's pimp out these Mexicans illegals. And who's building all these houses and building these giant people farms? It's these big ass companies with a bunch of Mexicans building these houses for people. Man, I got a lot of comments over here. Oh man, see you later, Dustin. Cutting corners, employees no longer care for the people they hire. It used to be you got big kickbacks, insurance, genuine welfare of the employees has become less and less a priority as they increase their own profits. And that's why I feel like capitalism is the antidote to capitalism is individualism. That's my solution, is to, create value and become an asset to yourself. And it's difficult for someone like me because I spend 11 hours a day just going to make, enough to make it through the next week pretty much, and save a little bit on the side, but not even really having much energy for myself, and then whatever time I have to myself goes, what else I have, goes into the menial shit like laundry and shopping and cooking. And then, I get some time for entertainment, but, I want to be in a relationship. I desire to be in a relationship. So I have a relationship. So a lot, time goes into that too. And then at the end of the day, what do I have time for? Myself. And that's at the end after everything else is taken care of. But that's the way we're trained in the schools. Like, the schools are literally designed for factory workers in America. Now that's kind of changing, but you got to realize capitalism is all about efficiency, and they wanted to figure out, okay, how do we train these people to work in a factory as quick as we can? And that's the saddest thing, is that people keep sending their kids into these schools where the kids are fucking brainwashed, man. And I was brainwashed, and you have to be brainwashed. It's literally against the law to not have your kid through the government program education system. It's so hard. You can't, and people don't even have time to raise their own kids, but it's like, we're programmed to put authority first and ourselves second, and it really irks me. I agree with that, man. Capitalism is definitely devoid of morality. There's not much morals left in this society. And, Yuri Bezmenov, the Soviet defector, says, once we become morally bankrupt, we're pretty much screwed. And you can see the moral bankrupt people, trying to just why are we stealing from each other at the bottom? Why are we fighting with each other down here at the bottom? Like, it's so sad. Your brother steals from you, your fiance steals from you, your boss steals from you, your fucking next door neighbor steals from you. Like, it's so sad. It's, you know where where has the morality gone? And that's what religion was supposed to do. It was supposed to knit people together into these communities. And that's why I really like religion in a lot of ways, especially like the non-morally bankrupt religion, where I'm not saying that there is or isn't anything wrong with religion, but religion is good in the sense that, like, it does teach morals on a fundamental level. And a lot of this fundamental shit goes back to sex, and that's what we've lost, I think. And there's this whole, it's just the industry of fucking sexualizing people, and that is just so powerful that people should really be aware of it, and they should be more sensitive to what they're exposing their children as far as violence and sex goes. Man, and even just speaking this shit takes it out of me. I don't know if this is not what I'm supposed to be talking about, or if I'm just lacking energy, but men are not born, they're created. And this goes back to the ancient ritual of becoming a man, which, the fucking common term for it is a rite of passage. And we used to have a rite of passage in America, which was basically going into the military for men. And I think that worked. When the military was actually, you had to have more physical endurance. I feel like to make it through the military was a thing, but a lot of people can't even make it through the military anymore. Like, you can't even, like, you got men that can't even do pull-ups or push-ups that don't even know, like, and I get that because you're not rewarded for how big and strong you are these days. You know, being big and strong doesn't really have a lot of value. It's who's fucking smart. Like, how intelligent are you and how much money can you make has become the priority. And that, again, is capitalism. But the military used to be a rite of passage, and especially in ancient times, you know, you look at Sparta and the culture, like, this is Sparta, and how many people got fired up about that fucking movie 300, and you see the dudes with the Spartan skull with the blue line through it, and it's like, man, those guns aren't gonna you can't eat your guns. Like, those guns aren't gonna protect you from your own government. Like, it's, you know, and that's back the blue, you know. It's pretty sad, but what we need is a rite of passage. You know, we need some real spiritual leaders to step up and have the balls to say, you know, there's something wrong with this. And I struggle with that because I feel like, you know, a spiritual person has to carry themselves in a certain type of way. But what I'm realizing is that there's more negative consequences, there's more karma involved in ignoring the darkness and corruption, and you know, there really is evil, you know, and that's what people forget. They think it's all love and light and fairy dust and unicorn farts, but, you know, that was the greatest trick the devil ever pulled off, is convincing people that he doesn't exist, and people turning a blind eye to evil and thinking that they can just vote, that they literally, people believe that their vote is actually gonna, like, oh, let me just vote and not worry about anything else, like the politicians will take care of it. And it's a sad day and age where people think that they're fulfilling their moral obligation to the world and their soul and their society, and their entire existence is being justified through a fucking vote, and giving it their, like, these politicians are continuing with business as usual. You know what? I don't fucking didn't like Donald Trump, and I don't like Joe Biden, and it's still business as usual with this party is no different from the other party, except on their face value. Like, they say they care more about the social ills of our country, our society, and they say they care more about the environment, and they say they're more about peace, but man, nothing has changed from this presidency to the next. It's still, they're still fucking up the environment. They're still continuing with everything the previous one started. They just look at this situation in Afghanistan. It was started 20 years ago. And is it over now? Hell no, it ain't over, because we left our weapons over there. It's like, why are we arming? Why are we there in the first place? Like, we've no fucking, sorry for the language, but no empires, as far as I know, has ever conquered that region, like the Middle Eastern and the Muslims over there. But before they were even Muslims, they still couldn't conquer over in Afghanistan. Like, they're never going to be conquered, because that's their way of life, man. They're warriors. And what, I just heard something about a drone strike. They're like, yeah, we killed about 7 people we weren't supposed to. Oh, collateral damage. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, let's just kill innocent children. Like, they're literally killing innocent children over there with their drone strikes and shit. But you can go back 20 years and look at what's actually happening. Or the Marines were guarding the poppy fields. Like, the Marines were literally guarding the opium that they were growing over there. And I feel like that fueled the fucking endemic opiate addiction. Like, I'm from Durango, Colorado over here, and we got a drug trade over there, like a mountain town where people are supposed to be healthy and jogging and mountain biking and snowboarding and skiing and UTVing, ATVing and camping and fishing, and you have this whole underground underbelly of fucking prostitution and heroin addiction and meth heads. It is bad, and you had a state sue a pharmaceutical company. I don't know which state it was. I feel like it was one of the southern states, Alabama or Georgia. But like, just to put things into perspective, when I was in jail in like 2007 or 8, one of the guards that was watching us told me how to sell drugs. A cop told me how to sell drugs. He said, what you do is you go down to the South and you get yourself a prescription from a doctor down there. They'll give you a subscription for 500 pills of oxycodone 10 or 15s or something. And he told me what you do is you go down there, you tell them your back hurts. You don't even have to get an inspection or an examination, and they'll just give you a whole script for 500 pills, and you take those pills back and you sell them up here. And this is coming from a cop while I was in jail telling me how to commit more crime. Like, that's how corrupt the system is. And you know what, you guys, let's talk about American exceptionalism. But first, let it be said, he who is without sin cast the first stone. And take that. Bye. Take the log out of your eye before you tell your neighbor or brother to take the splinter out of their eye. I really don't have any room standing. I don't have any moral high ground. I'm not a fucking victim over here of this society. I'm a victim to myself, and that comes back to selfhood and what I put in one of the topics. I have no room to say any of this shit because I am in this part of it, this machine. But let's talk about American exceptionalism, and that's why I crack down on the patriots, so-called patriots that are still waving the flag and praying for Trump to come back out and give us their Trump train and Trumpism. And even the Biden people, like, look, what is America great at? Locking people up. We're number one in the world for locked up motherfuckers. We can hear my fiance's car out there. You can hear all the traffic. You can hear her say she was leaving. She's going tanning. That's what we got to worry about, is staying tan and keeping up appearances and shit. But look, we're number one in locking people up. We have the highest crime rates in the world, the highest incarceration. And it's sad because you look at the statistics and it's like, crime isn't really increasing, but the legislation and the laws are getting worse. It's getting easier and easier to get locked up. And that's what we're number one is. And we have the biggest military and we have the biggest prison system. So what we're really best at is what? Subjugating people. We're best at locking people up and killing other people. That's what I see. That's what I see after 250 years of this country. It's without a doubt, America is the worst or the best, but it depends on which way you look at it. Is this a peaceful society? Well, we have capital murder as number one, and we have the worst poverty rates. We have the biggest wealth gap in the history of humanity. As far as I know, like the wealth gap is astronomical, and that's where you get all these social justice warriors coming out, and it's why socialism is becoming a more and more popular idea. It's just fucking crazy. People are wanting that universal basic income, and people just but I can't really say anything. This comes back to he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. And I am not without sin, but I am going to read an article for you guys because a lot of people are unaware of the dual revolutions that we have going on right now, and we are in a industrial revolution, biotech revolution, and an infotech revolution all at the same time. And this is not something to take lightly, because look at what the industrial revolution did. It changed us fundamentally to this cozy culture of sitting on our asses and being entertained to death. Literally. Like, what do people do when they retire in America? Well, most of the people that I know that are retirement age sit around and watch TV all day. And if that's what I got to look forward to, we had more freedoms in Great Britain before America was ever even started. That's what Steven said over on Facebook. It looks like my brother checked out, maybe, perhaps, on YouTube. But so this is a 5-minute read, and it says, powering the decision makers who are shaping the future. And this is from, how the pandemic has created a new breed of tech workers. 18 months in the COVID-19 has forced Silicon Valley to end its obsession with optimization. So this is an interesting article, and I didn't read it all the way, but I feel like, maybe my viewers might have some interest in something like this. And here we are entering the 18th month of the pandemic that has brought constant upheaval to virtually every aspect of our lives. We are adjusting to increased risks from a more potent variant, the omnipresent strain of a new set of restrictions, and the slow pace of vaccination. The hope that things will return to normal has somewhat been along the way quietly replaced with the hope that we'll find a new normal. So, just with the introduction of this article, you can tell basically where, that's why these introductions are so important. That's why in literature, when you were getting taught, and if you went to school, the intro paragraph is the most important, tells you the most. But, that's why I think hope is really deadly. Honestly, hope is I think toxic in my own opinion, because it gives people a false sense of security that someone or something is going to externally shift or change, which it's not. Like, if Biden mandating the vaccine wasn't enough to spark an overnight revolution, then ain't shit gonna change. But for those of us who spent most of our pre-COVID-19 hours in endless pursuits of ways to further optimize our daily hustle on behalf of technology startups, things have changed. We've changed. We're not the same people we were in February 2020. We've each weathered the past year and a half in different ways, but many of us have come to the exact same conclusion. The old ways of working don't work anymore, which I agree. I'm not completely satisfied with my job, the way I spend my time. I like learning how to frame. I like learning how to build houses in this commercial way, but it's also like not the most efficient way. There's a lot of waste, and there's a lot of labor that doesn't need to be done, especially the way that I'm doing it on this house that I'm working on. We're remodeling a house for a very rich man. He's got a $15,000 bidet. When I started TaskRabbit on the heels of the Great Recession, I quickly learned that many workers were ready to swap out their 9 to 5 for a more agile, independent working life. So what that is like, I agree with that. I want to be able to make my own hours. I want to control my own income stream. I want to have control over my own time, over my own life. We learned that control, see, this is interesting, and flexibility were the primary drivers of people searching for a new way to work. Post-pandemic tech workers want the same control and flexibility, yes, but they also unapologetically in pursuit of purpose and passion. The non-essential crisis. During the COVID-19, technology workforces shifted en masse to working remotely, confronting the non-essential nature of our work as our fellow citizens continued on the front lines of healthcare deliveries and infrastructure. Inevitably, that prompted big question about the meaning of it all, causing many to ask themselves why they were giving huge chunks of their time and talents to what were non-essential pursuits. As our Davin-driven minds watched infections, hospitalizations, and deaths climb up and to the right, we all began to reevaluate. Working parents, women especially, grappling with new burdens of childcare and virtual learning, began examining whether their lives could or should even ever reasonably be centered on work again. Other workers, particularly those in the early stages of their careers, began carving out time for creative projects, activism, and skill development. That trademark Silicon Valley hustle culture suddenly stopped making sense to the very same people who had held always be optimizing as a mantra. Our once precarious notions of work, life balance, and finally evaporated and left each of us independently assessing how to redefine what work means to us. The obsession with optimization has been replaced with a strong preference for integration as we seek more control, more purpose, more flexibility. The new tech worker. What's emerged is a new type of tech worker. These techies are more in touch with their personal capacity and more mindful of how work integrates with their broader lives. They don't see their work as simply transactional, but they also don't see it as the center of their worlds. They don't intend to go back to being tethered to their desks or devices. Some of them want to go back to an office, some want to stay home, some want both. They don't necessarily want to work for one company for long stints, and some don't even want to work for one company at a time. They've become unapologetic about finding roles and creating workflows that align with their values, preferred schedules, and new realities. These new workers exist at every level of technology industry, from software designers, sales team, customer service reps, corporate counsels, marketers to managers, full stack engineers to founders. The disruptive tech companies that built their offices as templates to the cult. Now, this is an very interesting sentence here. Cult of productivity now find themselves in a position they can't optimize their way out of. How do you retain talent that doesn't want to be tied down? The way forward, with 1 in 4 workers planning to switch jobs once the pandemic is over, according to Pulse of America worker survey, tech companies hoping to recruit and retain talent have an enormous task ahead of them to keep pace with the changed expectations and priorities while creating a culture that supports momentum. It's my belief that companies should focus their efforts in 4 key areas. Track output, not hours. Today's new tech worker is done with toxic productivity as they've folded more priorities into their working days. Their pacing has changed dramatically. This does not necessarily mean that people are working less. They're just more selective about how they use their time, and performance busyness that doesn't rank. Smart companies will stop tracking employees' time and pay attention to what they produce. Support integration. The illusion of compartmentalization between work and life is gone. Today's worker doesn't think about how to find the balance between two competing worlds. They think about how to effectively integrate work into their life. They've placed what matters to them at the center of their lives: family, friends, travel, creative project, personal missions to win their talent for the future. Companies must not insinuate themselves into that already claimed central real estate. Instead, they must make themselves flexible to integrate into their lives of the kind of employees that they hope to attract. Trade incentives for investments. Round-the-clock catering and company subsidization, egg freezing, and relics of hustle culture. Investing in companies instead of simply incentivizing their short-term performance will yield better results for tech companies relying on the same pool of talent. Commit to child care and elder care subsidies and logistical support to reduce the burden of working on parents, caregivers, and full stop. Consider offering sabbaticals, more robust family planning, beneficial and flexible leaves to commit to family, travel, or passion project. Unlimited paid time off is nice, yes, if there's not a stigma for taking that time off. Study has shown that there's a stigma. A better approach for companies to encourage employees to fully disconnect by giving its entire team a mental health break. Be explicit about your values. If today's best workers are searching for purpose, Help them to find it. Take time to establish your vision, mission, and core values. Make sure that they're more than marketing talking points. They should be baked into your company's culture and operations. An example of a company living its values is Ardent. Full disclosure, I'm an investor. A career clothing brand that recently launched an initiative to get women displaced by the pandemic back to work authentically matters to legions of talented workers hoping to live in the more meaningfully, and your company will become more attractive if you give them something genuine to align themselves with. And in conclusion, Silicon Valley obsession with optimization isn't optimized for what comes next. Employers hoping to be worthy of the workforce they need to build the future would be wise to turn their disruption inward, shaking loose the hustle culture and paving the way for a better way to work. Well, that's a mouthful. I feel like, that's a tough pill to swallow, but it reiterates my point is to turn inward, and that, people are really searching for purpose. People need to feel like they're making a difference. And that is the reason why I've created this podcast, to give myself purpose. Anyways, if you found any value in this presentation, give it a like, subscribe, hit the bell, share it. There is a lot of back and forth shit in this podcast, but I feel like it's important for us all to find our purpose and speak our mind and to develop the self. And it's a never-ending journey, development of the self. Well, that's all I got for today. I'm going to check out. God bless.